Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics head-to-head episode where we put two players up against each other to see who we will be picking out of those two players ahead of the 2025 AFL Fantasy season. This is episode 10 of the series. If you haven't checked out the other 9 episodes, make sure that you do that. We are on the final week, the final 3 episodes of the head-to-head series this week. So if you haven't checked back on, as I said, on the other 9 episodes, make sure you go and check that out. But we're chatting about a couple of rucks. The R2 position is so difficult. I feel like I'm not the only person changing my R2 position every couple of hours because we get news and different thoughts. We're not happy with the player. So we're chatting about two of those players in Kieren, Briggs and Tom de Koning. And joining me, I thought it was only fitting that we get the man behind the 50 most relevant to join another little mini series that we're doing here on the channel. You'll know him as one of the co-founders of the Coaches Panel. It is MJ. Mate, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm not doing a player a day episode at the moment, although over at the Coaches Panel on our channels, we are dropping content every single day, much like you. The grind doesn't stop, but loving it. What a great time of the fantasy footy season. We've got some intra-club, internal practice simulations, community series happening now too. And it's the time where we either make or break our fantasy footy side in the preseason. And as you mentioned, the rucks, well, it's a pain point for a lot of different people and understandable for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good time of the year, and it's obviously different because you're the guest today. Normally, I'm so used to hearing you as the host there. But how did the 50 most relevant go, mate? That obviously wrapped up a couple of days ago. How did that all end up going for you?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. The community has been so generous over I think it's about 8, 9, 10 years now. We've been doing the 50 most relevant. So generous in their support, whether it be watching, listening, people like yourself getting involved and collaborating with us. So biggest and best year yet, which is just absolutely incredible. And so, yeah, we're really thankful for the community. Love what we do at the Coaches Panel. Enjoy the 50 most relevant. And maybe it's quite apt that we had a bunch of rucks in the 50 this year, more than ever before. And the most relevant player this year, I've dubbed as Tristan Cherry, who is a ruck, probably opens up that conversation because what you do at R1 kind of restricts what you could maybe do at R2 and then ultimately has kind of cascading impacts with what you do with your other 28 selections.
Yeah, exactly. But make sure you guys do check out all 50 episodes, but we'll give another plug to that at the end of the episode. So we'll be chatting about the two rucks in Kieren Briggs and Tom de Koning. MJ will be taking Kieren Briggs. I'll take Tom de Koning. And as always, we start off with our guests. So MJ, why should people be looking at starting Kieren Briggs in their side for 2025?
I think what Kieran ultimately gives us, and we will look through some of his scoring elements and where the value does sit within him, because there is a little bit of fat on the bone here in this one, is the ultimate reason you're looking at a player like Briggs is twofold. One, you are really not confident spending up big bucks on the top end rucks, and also that middle to lower range of value options, you're just scared absolutely off. And so Briggs is your halfway house, look at both ways, and a chance to be a premium performer for us. We talked about these pain points at the top line of our rucks. Tristan Cherry, who I dubbed as the most relevant player of 2025, he was great for us last year, but it was that back half post-bye where he went on an absolute tear for us. And on that episode of the 50 most relevant with Pig Mentality, we unpacked how actually every variable went his way in terms of A, favorable matchups, and then B, the right players in those matchups where they're getting the second string ruckman in that spot. Now, is he still a great option for us over the front half of 2024? Yeah, he still went over 100, but the split was much more favorable both in fitness of rucks and in opposition of rucks. And the trends of ruck scoring for and against doesn't have as much variation as we see in other positional lines when you look through some of the DFS data. So when you break down what the first 6 to 8 weeks of Tristan Cherry's year looks like, it's actually indicating a potential repeat performance of last year, which is still a good start, sort of 100, 105, and then a barnstorming end, which means if that happens, you can't overpay and start him. But then all the other top line rucks have some kind of question mark or pain point for us. Rowan Marshall, still no certainty to play in round 1 at time of recording. Max Gawn commentary has started to get, if you want to be a real pain about it, a little alarming was you hear them talking about we've got depth in this spot now and we might be able to ease Max through the start of the season a little bit. English, well, no longer has the concern of a Crossley coming in as an SSP. There are talks that, well, we can manage him through that and all of a sudden your top end is out and then the middle tier is not great. So that was a long way of saying Briggs gives you a look at both spots here. The average of 91.5 last year is actually underselling him a little bit because in his last 10, he goes at 101.8. He goes mid-90s for us in 2023 as well. And he's got some ceiling games about him. He goes a 140 against the Tigers last year. He goes a 136 against the Blues. And so a player like Briggs does a couple of things for you. He gives you a chance to look and see if Cherry, if Gawn, if Marshall as the premium top 3 rucks are going to start the year strong and not cost you a leaking cash amount early. Briggs gives you that early days look to wait and see. While on the same side, he's priced at a space that he can really outperform by 5 upwards of 10 points per game. So you've got a little bit of value on him and you get a look and see at the top end. And then importantly, there's some other levels to it, Bales, is he's got that round 2 buy that you alluded to, which for some of us, we're like, I don't want any piece of that. But if you're running 30 green dots, because the option to run multiple green dots this year, especially at R3, is really relevant for us because you've got the potential of a Harry Boyd playing early for St Kilda and an almost certainty, I'm prepared to call it, of a ruck forward in Archer Reid at West Coast. He has looked outstanding this preseason, and honestly, I'd be shocked if he doesn't play in round 1. And so you're rolling into round 2 with potentially no activation ways to take that vice captaincy score. And there are some matchups there, Bales, that if you've got certain plays, there's probably reasons to be excited about. Like Port have the Tigers on Saturday afternoon. So if you're running a Rosie or a Butters, even a Horn Francis, I feel like teams are going to beat up on the Tigers. The Crows and the Dons, whether it be a Merritt or a Dawson, historically, both of those two have done well, let alone the Friday night Dogs and Pies game. So you've got these multiple great on paper matchups and potentially no way to be able to activate them. And it's a round 2. And if you're going to lose any spot that's easy to cover, isn't just the one ruck much easier to cover in that spot? So I just think there's enough little elements that sit through there. And then on top of, even if an Archer Reid's not there in R2, the news coming out of Fremantle is not promising about a Sean Darcy. So a Liam Reedy sitting at R3. 400K in at R3 to cover for Briggs, give you that look. By the way, they play the Swans at home and Grundy's scoring away from the SCG, at least using last year's data. Just wasn't great. So to me, Briggs feels a bunch of different things. It gives you a chance to activate your vice captaincy score in round 2. It gives you a look at the top end rucks to give you some validation about whether or not it's right or not to go there early in the season. It's the easiest of all the buys to protect with the round 18. It gives you a justification for why you're spending up for a Reedy at R3. And even if he only goes what he's priced at as a low 90s guy, which is historically what he's been the last 2 seasons, he's 150,000 away after round 2 or 3 to go and get that top end ruck once you've fixed something else correctionally. So to me, this feels like a real easy avenue and pathway to have a look, to know what it could be, and to not get hurt at the top end with leaking cash or get stuck in ruck purgatory with too much value.
Exactly. And the thing that's good with Briggs is that even if he goes 92, 93, even if he just holds value, he's not going to go down in price. The top guys are probably going to come down, especially if you think Marshall's going to play forward and if Gawn's being rested or what's happening with English State. They're not going to go up 100, 200K. Like they're going to stay at the same price, go up very, very marginally, or they're more likely going to drop because of how expensive they are. We know the magic number and what that does at the start of the year. And obviously you mentioned as well, you could play a Liam Reedy at R3. You could even play a Harry Boyd at utility if both are playing. Then you get 2 cracks at a ruck. So that's another thing. And you mentioned with that round 2 buy, with Tom Green now missing, we don't really have many options on that buy. Like Dan Rioli's there, but are we really starting him off a limited preseason? Probably more of a watch and wait. Leak didn't play until the fourth quarter. Match Sim is he best 22. Connor Stone's probably the only other player. So, like, if you're thinking about vice captaincy loopholes and everything, Kieran Briggs is that guy that not only do you get a look at your vice captain and that, you also get the double crack potentially if you start those or if you get one of them. And the other thing as well, you said he averaged over 100 in the back 10 games. That was with a bunged up shoulder as well. Like, he had off-season shoulder surgery to fix that up. Apparently he had a slower start to preseason, but for all reports, the Giants are saying that he's been going really, really well since then. He's been participating in training. He played the match sim against Grundy and scored like pretty well in 3 quarters. He didn't play the fourth quarter, and that was against Grundy, who obviously we know is a more difficult matchup. If Harry Boyd and Liam Reedy aren't named for round 1, and let's say Jackson's named and Harry Boyd's not there and Marshall's there, are you happy to go in with 21 players on that bye, knowing it's best 18? And I know Tim's mentioned this on our pod that last year we were probably over concerned with the early buys. We were thinking we have to have 22 on the field, whereas 21 probably could be enough. Do you think that's fine to just have that one round where you can have Briggs like not playing for you, and if you don't have an R3 to cover, is that something that you'd be happy with?
Yeah, in short, I would say yes, because when I look at what his next few matchups being is, ultimately we're struggling with rookies in a bunch of different lines anyway. Like, fielding a defender rook feels really challenging for us to have much confidence that we're going to score well. A lot of those top end midfielders that we thought would be stars for us this year have either some injury history that's now emerged for us, which is horrible, or they've got some real vest or even question marks about best 22. And so I'm seeing people really flock away from having many rookies on the field. And so I still think we'd be okay with 21 on field, given people are rookie averse, and understandably so. So to me, I think it's fine, because you've got the Hawks, the Eagles, the Saints, and the Crows after that bye. There's a couple of really nice matchups there on paper to me. So I really quite like it. And as you know, you kind of turn the corner thinking about what it looks like in a 50-50 battle with Koning. I don't see any competition for spots or for a role share with Briggs, but with TDK, I'm sure for you and for others that are questioning whether or not he's the right play, well, Briggs might just tilt the scale with none of those concerns.
Exactly. Well, we know MJ's a very good host, but he's also a very good man to have a segue, because that is a great segue to be talking about Tom De Koning. So obviously the buzz name the preseason for our R2. So as I always forget this, people know this, so apologies for that. I always forget to mention the price, ownership, and average from last year. So we'll go through that. So Kieran Briggs last year played most games, considering he had a bunged up shoulder, probably surprising. 22 games for an average of 91.5, and he's priced at 938K. 2.3% ownership, so very, very small, but that could start rising, especially if some of these other options are looking at sharing ruck time there. And then Tom De Koning, 900K, average of 87.8 last year from 17 games, and he's got an ownership of 29.1%. And the reason that he's quite popular is we're all looking at the upside. We know what he can do we've seen in games what he can do and what that upside could be as a number one ruck. And I know Mitch mentioned this on the Fit and Most Relevant with you, MJ, and he's mentioned on his pod as well, that this is where he likes to look, and a lot of people like to look for that ruck where they sharing the ruck time, then all of a sudden they get that number one ruck role, and that's where this big breakout happens. And that's where we've seen the likes of Tristan Sherry, Max Gawn, Tim English, Brody Grundy. Whenever they've gone from sharing to solo, they have a big increase in their numbers. So last year, there was 9 games where Tom De Koning played over 75% CBAs, or you could even lower it to just over 50%, because his other games I haven't included are all below 50%. So any game where he played over 50%, all of them being over 75, 9 games for an average of 102.3. That's including a game in round 19 against North Melbourne where he was essentially playing on one leg. He was injured. He only scored the 61 from 69% game time. He also had another game where he scored 119 points against Port Adelaide, but he also got injured in that game as well. So that could have even been closer to 130 if you played his normal game time allotment there. So that could be a 105 average. Obviously, if we remove that 61, that's a 107.5 average there as well. So this guy has got the upside to go that 105 to 110 if given the number one ruck role. And that's what we're looking for, because being priced under 90, potentially of 10, 15 points upside is massive. And when you consider it being on a line where there's not many options that we're really happy with, that 15 points could feel like a lot more than that 15 points. The big talking point, though, for Tom de Koning is Mark Pitney. So they had a piece come out on Channel 7 a couple of weeks ago where Pitney was talking about how he's improved his fitness. He's happy to be playing forward. He looks like he can add something more, and he's looking to make this dual ruck setup work better for Carlton this year, obviously, with their record. Then we hear the news of Charlie Curnow, little minor sort of knee surgery sort of cleanup, that he's going to be touch and go for round 1. Chance that they rest him because they're playing Richmond and he comes back round 2. You would think that paves the way for de Koning to play forward and for Pitney to play in the ruck. Obviously, they've got a young lad, I think Harry Lemmy, if I've got that correct. He's obviously a good prospect for them. Does he come in and replace Curnow? I don't think so. I think that they'd rather a de Koning forward and play a Pitney, a seasoned ruckman there, which scares us off, because if you then look at de Koning's numbers in the other games where he was sharing the ruck, and we'll just go based on last year. So there was a total of 8 games there for an average of 70.8, which is not great. That's including an 18 that he scored against Sydney from 68% game time. So very, very bad numbers. And obviously the contrast with average from when he's solo to when he's not is massive. So if you're talking to me about having a Pitney there round 1, I don't think I and a lot of the community want any part of Pitney, both Pitney and de Koning in round 1. Is that where you'd be sitting at, MJ? Do you think it's almost as simple as, because of the, I guess, lack of options at R2? We've talked about, obviously, Briggs. Is it just as simple as if Pitney's not there, you'd be happy to take that leap into de Koning, particularly if Curnow's not there? If they're playing de Koning number 1 ruck, you'd think that they're probably more sort of looking to play that de Koning solo ruck. So is that what you'd be looking at for in those opening teams in round 1?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of them playing on that Thursday night game for us too, is we'll see what the clubs are listed. It will ultimately give us the permission to look what we do with our other ruck position, let alone everywhere else. We've got the whole rest of the weekend to do. If the Tigers come out and do a Pitney and de Koning, well, okay, obviously you can pivot and jump away through that. But if no Pitney, TDK does scream one of the more obvious selections for us this year. But as an aside note, even if they ruck share, they play Richmond in the first round of the year. He could kick 8 because they don't actually have any key position defenders back there, with players like Bolter out, injured, and some other question marks around guys like Gibcus, Young, etc. Like, there's just nobody there that could stop him. So even with a 50-50 split with Pitney, the matchups might not be enough of a reason to scare you off. For me, if Pitney's named, I just couldn't go there. But for some coaches that really don't like any other ruck, and think Pitney's there just for that week without Curnow, yeah, don't mind that as a shout.
Because you could take that leap, right? We know that round 1 there's not drastic price changes, except obviously for those players that play in opening round. Obviously with a double price move, and it could go up or down quite heavily. That round 2 and 3 is where the big price movements happen, because players have either had a bad score or a good score, and their break-evens are really low or really high. So if de Koning put out a 60, 70, whatever, obviously it's not great on a Thursday night. You don't want that score, and that's why I'd be scared off. I wouldn't want a 60 or 70 sitting there knowing I could have pivoted away from it. But you can always jump off in round 2, and then you get a potential look at the other guys. So Jordan Sweet, is he going to take that leap? Briggs obviously will be on the bye, but you'd have a little bit of a better idea. And even if you got to an English for 1 week, and if de Koning was sharing, but then round 2, Curnow's back, Pitney's out, then obviously you don't have to make that trade, and you've probably got a bit of a unique as well. So it is quite interesting, but I do agree. I think it is probably, for me, if Pitney's named, I just don't go there. I don't want to lock in a poor score at that straight away. I'd prefer to wait, and then maybe de Koning becomes an option a few weeks after, and maybe he's a guy that we jump on. So I think that's the tricky thing with this R2. And just before we wrap up the episode, I think the R2 discussion is so interesting. I was telling off camera how I've gone from Marshall. Everyone knows I was set and forget the start. I went Marshall. We obviously chat about him on the 50 most relevant. Ross Lyon says he's going to play. Who knows? Is he limited? Is Harry Boyd there? I can't start him at 1.2 million. Then I'd pivot to Tom de Koning, who with Pitney there, I'm not going to go there. So I go back to Gawn. I hear the commentary about potential resting and Campbell playing. Do I want to pay 1.15 million for him when Sheasel's the exact same price, just for comparison? Move over to English. Who knows what, are they happy with him? Is he going to be managed through? Is Darcy going to be playing a lot in the ruck? Obviously, with Jamar out, that helps a little bit, but who knows? Then you're looking at guys like Nankervis, Darcy Cameron, Brody Grundy, Jared Witts. They're all priced at probably, like Lloyd Meek, they're probably priced at what they're going to do. Meek could have some value there, but where do you, and then we didn't even chat, obviously, to see then, obviously, Jordan Sweet is cheap. Darcy obviously was another one that got injured, which is unfortunate. But then you look at like as a Matt Flynn or a Nick Bryan or someone like that, but they're probably going to be sharing. So where do you sit currently at your R2 spot? And I think this will probably answer as well, sort of a little bit of who you'd be picking between De Koning and Briggs.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the only thing I'd state on that is if you're anti-paying top end in your other lines, why you pro it in the rucks? I know what the answers are, but I just would pose that as a reflection question back for people watching and listening who so quickly because it rolls off the tongue nicely, set and forget rucks. We treat this division of the ground differently to others. If you're anti-Sheasel because you think he's top priced, or you're anti-Horn Francis because you think he's top priced, but Cherry, no problems, even though he's top priced, I'd just say, just reconsider. That's why you should use your preseason, is consider every options. Look, right now for me, I'm happy to tell you, I'm running a combo in my rucks of Briggs and TDK. That's who's currently my 1 and 2 in AFL Fantasy right now, because I don't want any piece of the top end rucks. There's no quote unquote value that I'm comfortable with. I'd like to see how this rucks shape up. The middle tier, I'd like a little bit of a look. R3, I'm running Reedy, so I'm happy to be transparent. We're doing a best 22 video on the channel soon and revealing my team after, or actually heading into opening round. That's what I'm currently rucking with, is I think Briggs' undeniable look and see and a little bit of value gives me the VC loophole in that second round. TDK, should there be no pit net, I'll run that way. And Reedy, I think it looks like he's got a good 5, 6, 7 week stretch, potentially that long, as they talk about Darcy rebuilding fitness and health in the waffle, which they've never really said. That for me is how I'm running in the rucks right now with, oh, by the way, Archer Reed at FA.
Yeah. You're right. So you get a little bit of coverage as well, and you got that flexibility. So who would you, well, because I thought you'd only have one, I didn't actually know you had TDK. If you had to pick one of Tom De Koning and Kieran Briggs, who would you actually pick if you had to split it?
I would want to know, by the time I'd have to make the decision, I know these two things. One, is Pitternet named? And two, what did Briggs do in opening round? Whatever those two variables split will tell me exactly where I'd go. If you like things having no headaches, Briggs is the headache-free selection. If you like someone that could actually be one of, if not the best, rucks rolling around, well, ruck solo is TDK's already got a higher proven performing ceiling. Yeah,
I think you answered it exactly perfectly. And what I would say is that it'll be probably decided for us heading into Thursday. On Wednesday night, the night before the season starts, you can make, if you're choosing between these two, you'll know, as you said, what did Briggs score in opening round? What did his role look like? How did he look? And then you also get to see, is Pitney named or not? And I think that'll make the decision. So, yeah, I think it's perfect. If I had to lean one right now and someone said pick one, I'm probably leaning Briggs, because I don't know if I see, obviously there is a world where he does, but I just don't see how Pitney's not there round one with everything we've had out of Carlton. On the match sim on the weekend, obviously Pitney was the number one ruck for the first centre bounce of the game, and also the first of the second quarter. I think TDK was the first for the third quarter. Not actually sure with that. So if someone in the comments lets me know and wants to correct me on that, then let me know. I can't actually remember, but that's sort of where I sit with that as well. And this R2 spot it's a headache, I think, for all of us, and it's so different. And this is what we love about fantasy, right? Last year, we had a plethora. We had Gorn, Grundy, Cherry. Some people started all three. Some people started a couple. Some people started one and had to shift around. This year, we probably don't know if we want to pick any, because you mentioned Cherry, like with the value and tough run, and we mentioned all the others. They've got a question mark. There's no ruck where I look at it and go, there's no questions. He's just a good selection. Like, if you want someone like that, maybe you go like a Toby Nankervis, who you know what you're going to get, but there's no upside. And we obviously we try to look for values in our ruck. So it's very interesting, and going to be, I think, a big dictator in early ranks and how you go this season. So, and currently for me, obviously MJ said he's got both. I've currently got neither. But Briggs is the guy that may, even after this video, I may or may not be plugging into my R2, because I've liked this discussion on Briggs. So we'll have to see. But opening round will probably dictate a lot of that. But MJ, that'll be the end of the episode. Thank you, obviously, very much for jumping on with me. For people out there, let us know in the comments below who you'd be picking out of these two rucks. And then let me know. I want to know from everyone watching, who's your R1 and R2 at the moment? Because I think it's going to be big. I think Cherry's a lot of people's R1s, but who's your R2? And if you've got something different, let us know in the comments. Even if it's just the two names, let us know, and it'll be good discussion in the chat. But MJ, thank you very much for jumping on with us for this episode. Where can the people find you across the socials? And then where can they get in touch with you guys at the Coaches Panel? And where can they find all the 50 most relevant, all the other great content you guys are pumping out?
Yeah, thanks so much, mate. We're on TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook. Just search for the Coaches Panel. We are there. We'd love to get in touch with you. We got a podcast and a video dropping every single day. So whether it be on YouTube, if you're watching, hi, nice to see you. We're dropping videos every day, as are the audio podcasts. We've got a Patreon, much like you, Bales, that people get that extra access, extra content, and opportunities to learn some stuff. Even running some merch in 2025 that's rolling out the door quite nicely. So busy pre-season for the Coaches Panel if you're just new to us or just getting into your AFL fantasy for a whole new season. Yet again, there is a ton of stuff that's rolling through all of our platforms and all our channels.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, make sure you guys go and check that out. All the links for everything in the description below, as always. Links to the Patreon as well. So make sure you go and follow the boys at the Coaches Panel on Patreon and help support them there for pumping in all the great content. And you can also find our Patreon as well. The link is in the description for that as well. We have a cash league running, so anyone that signs up before round one is in the running to take home a prize. And the more people that sign up, the bigger the cash prize. So obviously, the more of you sign up, the potential more money you guys could win back as well. And if we get enough, maybe I might even do a first, second, and third prize as well if we get enough people in there. So make sure you go and sign up there. You get that plus all exclusive bonus content in there as well, including a Monday night live stream where we review your own teams. You can jump on and have a chat and see how your round went. But the links to that is in the description below, or it is at patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. Make sure you check that out and check out the Coaches Panel Patreon as well. But we've only got 2 episodes to go, so I'll be joined by my fellow fantasy fanatic, Tim. We'll finally be able to record that episode. We said a few episodes ago about those 2 West Coast forwards that we might be considering for our side to make sure there's potentially 4 or 5 of them. I'm not going to reveal. You guys can find out on Wednesday what that'll be. Make sure you guys tune into that. If you did enjoy the video, make sure you smash like on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers, so if you can help us reach that, that'd be fantastic. And if you're listening back to the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. That'd be very, very much appreciated. And yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of days. See ya.